Hello, guys, and welcome to the Golazzo America YouTube channel with Benny Feilhaber. I'm your host today, Tony Miola. Be sure to hit like and subscribe down there at the bottom. Drop your comments in the live chat. By the way, today's going to be the day you want to drop your comments. So let's get after it.
Good to be
Hello,
here.
welcome to Call It What You Want. I'm your host, Tony Miola, alongside World Cup veteran Benny Feilhaber. Jimmy and Charlie still doing their thing over in Europe. We got a lot to get to today, Benny and I. We're going to walk you through the paces here for the next hour. Mauricio Pochettino has narrowed down his roster for the upcoming friendlies against Turkey on June 7th and Switzerland on June 10th. That roster does not include names like Pulisic, Robinson, McKennie, Weah, Reyna, Sargent, Cameron Carter-Vickers, and Musa. We'll talk about all of that here in a little bit. The U.S. Open Cup round of 16 wrapped up last night. We now know the matchups. We'll get to those here. Benny and I were on the coverage. I don't know, Benny, it was like 4 a.m. we got back after that coverage, but it was a heck of a lot of fun. By the way, Chris Brady, goalkeeper for the Chicago Fire, will join us in a bit. We'll talk about the Fire's 3-1 win over the New England Revolution on Tuesday night. That was the first match of the round of 16. We'll get his thoughts. He was, by the way, on the 60-man roster, was not named to the, I'm going to do quick math here. They tell you never do a 27-man roster that came out today. So, Benny, let's get rolling here, man. 27 guys in camp. What's your first thought when you see, we'll go through them individually. I'll give you all the names in a second, but your first thought when you see this roster?
Yeah, well, the first thought that I had was the names that you were just listing, and it kind of went on and on and on about the guys that aren't going to be there. So you kind of get a sense of what this Gold Cup's going to look like for Mauricio Pochettino and what he intends to get out of it. It's definitely not the full A team, but we're going to see a lot of new faces and hopefully some guys, catch the eye of the manager.
Yeah, let me get through the roster here really, really quick, and then we'll break it down one by one positionally here. Goalkeepers, Matt Freese, Patrick Schulte, Zach Steffen, and Matt Turner. So 3 from Major League Soccer. Obviously, Matt Turner, Crystal Palace. Minutes have been sparse for him. Benny, let me start here with this one. Happy Matt Freese is in camp. I think that he's been one of the most underrated goalkeepers in the league. Patrick Schulte and Zach Steffen have already had their time in camp. Zach Steffen, we thought last year going into Nations League, I shouldn't say last year, March, going into Nations League, he might have been the guy. Mauricio Pochettino stuck with Matt Turner, but of course, we now have the quotes from Mauricio Pochettino with regards to the goalkeeping situation in particular, because he's always asked about it, and he essentially said it's open, right? Like I at some point, we talked to Matt, and I'm paraphrasing. We talked to Matt, or I got it here. He said it's open in our mind. It's open for another player maybe to challenge. I think it's true that he's talking about Turner here not playing, and we're talking with him, and we translated the idea that for the future, in 1 year's time, I think he needs to find a way to compete every week. Basically, Benny's saying we need to find a way to play week in and week out. And I think you'd agree, that's probably the sentiment for everybody in this group leading into a World Cup.
And this is a massive opportunity for all these players that are in the Gold Cup. I mean, I've said it before, this is the last opportunity before the World Cup for a prolonged period of time of training, right? You're going to have the whole coaching staff, the goalkeeping coaching staff there, and being able to observe these 4 guys potentially in the Gold Cup to see who's the best guy right now, right? And the guy that's going to be able to play in these games in the Gold Cup and prove whether he's up to the challenge, so to speak. I think that's going to be a massive sign really of who we're going to see in a year from now, obviously dependent on who plays for the next 12 months at their club teams as well.
Yeah, that's for me is really important. I'm on record literally 5 minutes when I was on the radio at my other job, 5 minutes after they got knocked out by the Netherlands in 2022. And I said, look, we had too many guys on the field that weren't playing full time at their club, and you're starting more than half your team. And they're not playing week in and week out. I said by 2026, that has to change. I'm a firm believer. I just don't know, Benny. Look, you've coached, right? And I'm sure you've had guys that were injured that come back who didn't play for 4 weeks, but you see them in training. they start to build a little bit. I just don't know that if you're sat on the bench for an entire year playing 7, 8 games in a year, that you can be, no matter how good you play. And quite honestly, Matt Turner played 7 games prior to 7 or 8 games with Arsenal prior to the 22 World Cup. And he was really good in the World Cup, I thought. But my mind always goes to how much better could you have been if you were playing? You played at I don't know, make up a number. You played at an 8. Could you have been a 9 if you were playing all year? And that's got to be the juggle in your head as a manager, right?
Yeah, well, look, Tone, I think you talk about goalkeeping more so than any other position in soccer. You need consistency. So you're talking about, 1 to 10. Well, give me a goalie that's going to give me a 7 every single day. And if he gives me an 8 or a 9 once in a blue moon, great. But give me a 7 every single day, as opposed to a Matt Turner. If he's not playing games consistently, you might find that 8 or 9 more often than maybe another goalie, but you're also going to find that 4 or 5, because lack of playing time at the goalkeeping position, man, that's no joke. It makes a massive difference with players in other positions. You can find moments, minutes off the bench, whatnot. Goalkeeper, give me consistency above all else.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. All right, let's move on to defenders here. Arston, Serginho Dest, his first camp in since the Gold Cup in 2024. Alex Freeman, I've been telling you about this kid here for a couple of weeks, so we'll talk about it in a second. DeJuan Jones back in. Played on the right side in the Open Cup for Bruce the other night. Ken play on the left side. Mark McKenzie, Tim Ream in camp. Chris Richards coming off that FA Cup win, and Miles Robinson. I had Miles Robinson in the Hell is Real Derby this past weekend. I was on the call for that, and one of the comments I made, because I'd seen him early in the year. I'd watched the 2 games prior in preparation for calling that game, Benny, and he seems to have that explosive. That explosive, first 2 steps back that maybe he was missing a little bit last year, coming off that massive knee injury that he had the year before.
Miles Robinson is a guy that I think is a very likely candidate to maybe start in the World Cup, but at least be a 3rd or 4th option for sure. And it's important because we've seen him play at his best. Injuries play a part of the sport, and it's tough to come back from him. But I agree. I think we've seen him starting to get back to that, resemblance of what he looked like when he played in Atlanta.
Yeah, and it's good to see, because if you think about, oddly enough, I was on the call in the afternoon game in Atlanta when he did his knee. I was calling the game for the Chicago Fire, and my first thought immediately was World Cup. How this, and we didn't know at the moment, right? But you sometimes you assume, although you shouldn't really assume. But if you've been through a knee injury like I was in my career, kind of see him walk off, you're like, holy cow, let's hope he can get back. And I obviously wasn't ready for the World Cup, but let's hope that World Cup dream for Miles Robinson doesn't completely go away. All right, we'll go to your position here. Brendan Aronson, listed as a midfielder, has played all year as a number 10 with Leeds United. Tyler Adams, Sebastian Berhalter, been probably the best American box-to-box midfielder we've had in Major League Soccer the entire year. Johnny Cardoso, we'll get to him in a second. Luca Del Torre back in. Diego Luna, no surprise there. Jack McGlynn, who's now at Houston, but a buddy he played with for quite a while in Philly. Quinn Sullivan, Malik Tillman in, and Sean Zawatsky gets the call here from Mauricio Pochettino's side. And keep in mind, with the 27 men, this will not be the Gold Cup roster. Even if he wanted to just use all of these players, he's got to cut some players from this. But break down this midfield.
So I think when you look at this midfield, we were talking about this before coming on the air. There's a lot of new faces, right? Whether it's faces that we've seen, for a little bit with the national team, like a Diego Luna, or guys that we barely have seen at all. I think when you break down this roster, I think the sense has to be, okay, well, it's not the full team. It's not the A team. So you're not working to, get the cohesion and the chemistry between the guys that are probably playing big minutes in the World Cup. I think it's more about finding which guys are going to make that roster and that you can count on off the bench. So I'd like to see some players that are on that, especially that midfield line, some guys that we haven't seen that much. How can they impact the game? How do they fit in with the system? What can they, bring out of Pochettino's system. So I'm hoping we see obviously guys like Diego Luna, maybe even guys like if we brought the graphic back up, I think Sean Zawadzki is a guy that'd be interesting to see where he fits in. I think we kind of know what Tyler Adams can bring. I think we should see Johnny Cardoso at length if he's eventually on that Gold Cup roster. Sebastian Berhalter. Quinn Sullivan even, right? He's a guy that's brought a lot of energy, and that's something that we've been missing on the national team. Can he be a spark off the bench, maybe even the World Cup? And so I think that's kind of where Pochettino's head, I think, should be at with this roster, and hopefully we see some different names in there, especially in the early rounds.
Yeah, I'm always intrigued how managers, and I don't know if this is a PR thing with these releases, but like Brenden Aaronson, for example, listed as a midfielder. What does that tell you? He's played as a number 10. We envision him always in the attacking part of the field, running at players, running through lines, and being a guy that plays in tight spaces, all those things. But again, you can always interpret it like you could take a formation like I don't know, a 4-4-3, 4-2-3-1, and it looks like if you have point up, it looks like a 4-2-3-1. If you have point down, it looks like a 4-1-4-1, and then you interpret these guys as different positions. I just wonder what it means because if you remember when Pochettino took the job, he specifically talked about Brenden Aaronson and how he had been playing too many positions, and he hadn't really found the position for him. Now I see him all year as the number 10, and now I see this list as a midfielder. I don't know what I should make of it. Does that mean he's going to play a little bit deeper? Does that mean he's going to play wider? I don't know. Does any of that ring a bell with you?
Not really. Honestly, I think it could be PR, could be one of those where, hey, Poach, how do we want to assign Brenden Aaronson? I don't know. What did he play this year? 10. Okay, just put him as a midfielder. If we want to use him as a winger, we can use him there. If we want to use him as a 10, an 8, I think he can play in those positions. But yeah, I don't read too much into, how they, label them on this roster release.
Let's get to the forwards here. So 10 midfielders named, 5 forwards named. Patrick Agyemang had a goal last night, although they lose a pretty damn good goal we were watching last night. Balogun is in. Damian Downs back in camp here. Hopefully no issues there. Brian White, the leading American goal scorer in Major League Soccer, and Haji Wright back in here. And Pochettino wanted to use him or couldn't use him in the Nations League. Remember, he was injured. The timeline for his injury was a little bit longer than when he actually came back. So that by the time that preliminary roster came out for Mauricio Pochettino, he wasn't ready to play. But the time that the Nations League started, he was. And if you remember, he came back, he scored the hat trick right away, and everyone was like, we need to bring Haji Wright in. But now he gets an opportunity here, at least in this camp.
Yeah, with these 5, I think it goes back to what you talked about, Brenden Aaronson. I'd be curious as how Poach sees all these guys, because Agyemang, Balogun, and Brian White, out and out number 9s. Haji Wright can sometimes play on the wings as well. Damian Downs, I don't know where has he played mostly at Cologne this year?
I think on the right side, if I'm not mistaken.
So
those
guys could be potentially, guys that play on the wing if that's the system that he chooses to play. But 3 of those guys basically number 9s out and out. And so it'll be interesting to see kind of what he does there. Is Balogun going to be the guy that is given the majority of the minutes to try and find his form back with the national team? He's been out a little bit with injury and slowly made his way back. A guy that I've liked is Brian White in MLS this year. Obviously, Agyemang as well has been good, but Brian White has been scoring at will. His movement is good. I really like what he brings. However, I would have loved to see him with some of those, prototypical starters like a Pulisic on one wing, maybe a Weah on the other, guys that can create for him, because he is very good at the movement inside the box. So hopefully he gets some minutes, but I don't know exactly what that looks like with the team that we have here for this Gold Cup run.
Yeah, so it looks like Downs largely played as a striker here, but he has played on the right side. So let's throw him in there with the strikers for now, because that's the position that he played for the most part. All right, now we get to the omissions here, and of course we talked about some big names. Christian Pulisic, I'm going to get you a statement here from sporting director Matt Crocker in just a second. Pulisic, Jedi Robinson, Weston McKennie, Timothy Weah, So Weah, Reyna, and McKinney, all at the Club World Cup. Josh Sargent, EFL Championship Team of the Year. Musa, who recently has started playing for Milan again. Cameron Carter-Vickers, Tanner Tessmann, Paxton Aronson. I'm not sure. I put him in the core group because we really haven't seen him. And Zendejas, who has been kind of that tweener guy, right? Like, do we bring him in? Which profile does he match up the best with? Who on the team doesn't get called in? Let me get the comment, because I know Christian Pulisic is going to be the topic of discussion. I want to get your thoughts on him not coming in, but this is from Matt Crocker. Christian and his team approached the federation and the coaching staff about the possibility of stepping back this summer. Given the amount of matches he has played in the past 2 years at both club and international level with very little break, after thoughtful discussion and careful consideration, we made the collective decision that this is the right moment for him to get the rest that he needs. The objective is to ensure he's fully prepared to perform at the highest level next season. So, doesn't sound like any imminent injury. It sounds like a fatigue, sort of long wear and tear. And keep in mind, he's played over 50 games the last 2 years. So if he plays on Saturday, by the way, against Monza, that's the last game of the season. No European football next year. It'll be his 120th game for club and country in the last 2 years.
I'm not even going to try to put myself in Christian Pulisic's shoes and judge him in any way, right? I've never played 120 games in 2 years, let alone at the level that he's been playing at with AC Milan. So, if he needs the rest, he needs the rest, and I'm not going to argue with that. And at the end of the day, you want to be as fit as possible going into next year, playing in an important season the year before the World Cup. Having said all that, it is extremely disappointing from a U.S. men's national team perspective that you're not only not going to have Christian Pulisic, but a lot of other guys that are probably starting the first game in the World Cup in 2026. And so you're not going to have the chemistry, you're not going to have the cohesion, and more importantly, you're not going to have the system that, Pochettino is trying to put these guys together in. And this is the perfect environment that, Pochettino is finally going to have weeks of training prior to the first game. It's the longest he's going to be with this team in camp. And unfortunately, he's not going to have his A players around to kind of, put all the pieces together and see what fits with who.
Okay, so what do you do, right? The guy comes to you and says, hey, Benny, you're the national team coach. He comes to say, Coach, look, I'm about to play my 120th game. I'm fatigued. I don't know that this is the conversation. I'm just making this up, right? I'm fatigued. I got a little banged up in February. It took me a little bit of time to get back. Sore. I think I could use a rest here for the weeks. And now you're the national team coach, and you're like, exactly what you're talking about. I'm a year from the World Cup. I don't have these guys a lot. This is an opportunity in the tournament. It's the first time I'm going to get an extended period of time with the group to put them together on the field and almost have a club environment for a couple of weeks. Preparation, pregame, videotape after, like all the things that you do, that you don't get to do normally as a national team coach. Look, I'm okay if the guy needs a break. Look, your body is your body, right? Your body says, hey, I need a break. Well, guess what? You need a break at some point. What do you do?
Well, I think it's important that you have already built a good relationship with some of these top players, right? And Christian Pulisic being the most important player on the team, hopefully Poch has created that relationship. He can kind of have a real honest conversation with him. And I think, look, I've only played with Christian Pulisic in one camp, but I've seen him from afar. He seems like a pretty honest person, not a guy that would want to take time off if it wasn't necessary, or if it wasn't deemed, better for his long-term body and performance. So I think you kind of take him at his word, and you don't want to push, the wrong button in that sense. But again, I just go back to the outcome of this. I'm not saying that it's the wrong decision, but there is an outcome from it, right? And the outcome is that you're not going to have your best player within this training environment where you can really utilize that time as a coach to get those pieces lined up in the way that you want them to be playing.
I'm with you with regards to making sure that this guy's one of our main players, if not the main player. I put Anthony Robinson kind of in the same level, right, of Christian
And
Pulisic.
another guy we're going to be missing, obviously.
Right, with regards to Jedi Robinson. Now, Jedi Robinson not available because he's been dealing with some issues too, and he also needs an opportunity to rest now. So that left side of the field all of a sudden becomes just looks a little bit different. And here's my biggest concern with the left side of the field. If you remember back to Jamaica, the second game against Jamaica to qualify for the Nations League, and the wrinkle that Pochettino put in, which looked to work so good. Now, I don't think you do it against everybody. I don't think you do it against the top teams in the world because you might be pinned back for a little while. But he had him running into the midfield. And basically playing as a second midfielder, which eventually had him ending up inside the box at the top of the box, looking for balls that were pulled back, right? And he has a soccer IQ that's through the roof, Jedi Robinson. Now, what does this left side of the one, what does the left side look like? And two, how the hell can you work on that again when you don't have the two most important pieces there? Which means that sets that part of the preparation, if Mauricio Pochettino wants to use that down the road, it sets that part back a little bit.
Oh, it sets it back more than a little bit. And that's exactly my point. And so, look, the left side of the back line is, to me, the biggest question mark from a competitive standpoint in the Gold Cup, right? I'm not talking about preparing for the World Cup in a year from now, because I do think that all those players would have been essential to have in camp to kind of get that cohesion and understanding. But that for Gold Cup and the competitive aspect, I mean, that left back position, I think it's Arsene, but Arsene doesn't play as a left back.
Yeah, more of a wing back.
He's a wing back. You see him more attacking than defending in that system, especially with how much, Wilfried Nancy plays with possession on that Columbus Crew team. And so, Arsene's being asked to play ultimately a completely different position if he's playing left back. If you play Serginho Dest on the left, then, he's playing on his weaker foot. I just don't know who you really put there. So that's a big, big question mark from a competitive standpoint.
Yeah, DeJuan Jones has played there, although he's been playing on the right. He played on the right for Bruce the other night. Yeah. He's a possibility. It's tough, right? Because if you want to work on, again, that part of it, that's where I get caught up. So let's just talk big picture then. After Nations League, the first narrative from pretty much at least everyone here, and call it what you want, but I've seen it all across, pundits in the U.S., the Gold Cup becomes really, really important all of a sudden, right? Which in general, if you go and win the Nations League and you play well, this doesn't seem nearly as important, although it's important to win everything, right? Now you don't have all of these guys. How do we judge what happens in this Gold Cup? Like, how will you judge it?
I think I will judge it. Me personally will judge. Do I think from what I've seen, there's, a handful of players that before the Gold Cup, I wouldn't have picked out to play in the World Cup a year from now. And now I say, okay, I can count on these guys to spot start potentially if there's somebody that gets injured, right? If, God forbid, somebody that's big on the team gets injured, can this guy play in that position in his place? Somebody that can come off the bench and maybe spark something, right? We've seen Diego Luna slowly work his way into the national team. Can we find another player like that can do the same thing? And so to me, that's how you judge it from a long-term perspective. Obviously, you want to win the tournament to feel good, to build the confidence. But I think that's how you judge it based on the roster that we're seeing that's being put together.
Yeah, you're probably right. I saw the comment there about Freeman on the right, Dest on the left. I get the sense that they don't want to use Dest on the left. That they would use him in an emergency, but I'm not quite sure that's what they'll use him. But keep in mind, when he first started at Barcelona, he got his breakthrough really on the left-hand side. I'm telling you what, watch this Freeman kid. I'm really intrigued by this kid. I don't have a big enough sample size to give you like a perfect analysis other than probably 6 games now, 3 of which I called, and then the games that I was watching in preparation for those. Man, I like what I see so far. Still raw, still has a lot to learn, but I'm really happy that he's going to get an opportunity here. It may work out, may not work out in the end, but I like what I see from him. All right, we're gonna table the conversation. We'll do a little bit more later on. Keep the comments coming in. Hit like and subscribe here. Just want to get you the Open Cup scores here before we head to break. Bring on Chris Brady. Chicago and Chris Brady did beat the New England Revolution 3-1. San Jose 1-0 over Portland in stoppage and extra time. The Red Bulls go on to win in penalty kick shootout last night against FC Dallas. Nashville 3-2 over Orlando City. A couple bangers in that one. Philly made easy work of the Pittsburgh Riverhounds, so no more USL teams left in the competition. 4-1 they win. DC United 3-3 and then 2-1 on penalty kicks. They go through over Charlotte. Minnesota United come back, beat St. Louis SC, who really needed a win, but Minnesota at home, and I think they're going to run it out at home here as it looks. And then Austin in the last match last night, 3-1 in that Texas derby over the Houston Dynamo. All right, we're going to step aside here. I mentioned Chicago 3-1 over New England Revolution. Chris Brady was in goal for that. We're going to chat with him live here on Call It What You Want. Stick around, and again, keep those comments coming in.
The clock never stops. Relive the greatest moments with uninterrupted highlights and more.
It's Gareth Bale! Ronaldo! Wonderful goal!
On the UEFA Champions League channel. Streaming free.
All right, welcome back into Call It What You Want. Tony Miller with Benny Fehlhaber. Just mentioned to you before the break there the scores. Let's talk the draw first before we bring Chris in. It was here on Morning Footy this morning. That's the second time we've done it here. Seems like everyone wants to avoid the draw. Everyone's like so scared. Like, who wants to do the draw? And everyone's panicking to do the draw. You know,
it's the hand motion with the circling
the camera.
of the balls.
What they have the. What they call that? The camera, not the swirling camera, but
the twirling camera.
Twirling camera, yeah.
Twirl cam.
Yeah, it's become like the thing that they don't want to do. All right, Philly Union will host the New York Red Bulls, so not a long trip for the Red Bulls here. Nashville against DC United. Minnesota United, a team that you've been talking about, against the team that I've been talking about, the Chicago Fire. Two managers that will look to put full teams out as much as they can. And then Bruce Arena, San Jose Earthquakes against Austin FC. Which ones stick out to you here?
Well, Minnesota's the one that sticks out the most because they got a home game. If they win, they got another home game. If they win, they got another home game. So they have 3 home games to be a champion and put that first trophy in the trophy case. So I'm looking at them to do their job. But obviously, like you said, Chicago Fire is going to be tough. Philly Union has a home game. There's a lot of true competitors, I think, in this bracket. But I'm going to stick with the Loons. I think they got enough to do to get it done.
Yeah, I'm going to, and not because of our guest, because I've said this on air for 3 weeks. I'm going to stick with the Chicago Fire and Greg Berhalter because I think also for them it means a lot. Let's now bring on Chris Brady, who was in goal for that 3-1 win against the New England Revolution. He joins us now live on Call It What You Want. Chris, what's happening, man? Tony and Benny, thanks so much for jumping on with us.
Yeah. Thank you guys for having me.
Chris, I'm going to ask you right off the bat, what'd you think of the draw? Are you guys are you disappointed? You get the final at home if you get there, but 2 away games to get there.
Yeah, a little disappointed. It's always nice to play at home, but I think we've been able to get the ball rolling, especially for away games. So I'm not too mad, and I know we'll be throwing everything in the kitchen sink at it.
Hey, Chris, first off, congrats on the win again. Benny and I have been on this coverage here, and everyone's, they ask us all the time, who's going to win this one? And our first reaction is, well, let's see how these managers approach it. And how do they approach it depending on what the lineup looks like, right? And then we'll give sort of an educated guess if we can. Greg Berhalter has laid out basically the starting lineup as close as he can get for, who was it, Detroit the first game, and then against New England this game. What's been the messaging from Greg with regards to how important this tournament is?
Oh, very important. I mean, any opportunity for us to win some hardware, we're taking it with all seriousness. And I think in that Detroit game and even in the last game, we've had the opportunity to rotate just a couple of guys, even throughout the midfield, just a few, but slowly building up to, I think full strength. So, the message is just we're gonna win some hardware.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of similarity to what it seems like Greg's, putting out there for the team in terms of a lineup, and also what the message is to how I got the message received from Peter Vermees. And so we always took that tournament very seriously. And I think that when you take it seriously in terms of, putting the lineups out there and showcasing your best team, it tends to not only get you through those early rounds, but I think it gives you the confidence at the end when you get to those later rounds to continue to win, whereas some other teams not necessarily the same. So does that kind of give you guys a little bit of an edge going forward? And you guys have been great, maybe one of the best teams in MLS on the road.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I think it speaks to our cohesiveness, but also our depth, being able to, rotate a handful of guys, but getting the whole team basically on board. I totally agree.
Looking at this now, we're down to, the thing that stinks, right? You got to wait till July to play another game now in the tournament. You remove your brain a little bit from all of this. A lot of things happen between then. Talk about the shifting of the mentality. Obviously, in the league, you guys, the history. You're a kid from the Chicago area, I think Naperville, right? The history of the Fire. You've been around it now for a couple years. The first focus, I would imagine, right, is making the playoffs and seeing if you can make a run. But just talk about that shifting in mentality all the time.
Yeah, 100%. I think another way we've been approaching these games is just another opportunity to continue to stay sharp, especially since most of these games are midweek. Being able to stay sharp come weekend, come Saturday. This week it's Sunday at New York. But yeah, I think we've been treating these as also an opportunity to test our skill sets. Like I said, test the depth and just continue to remain sharp, because ultimately, I think, like you said, our goal is to make playoffs and make a run.
Let me ask you about one of your teammates. I'm a big fan of the 10 position, as I played it myself. Young up-and-comer American Brian Gutierrez. What do you see of him? What's his ceiling? We just talked about a little bit of the Gold Cup roster, maybe a guy that sees the national team in the future. What are your thoughts on him?
Incredibly high ceiling. That's my boy. The magic I've seen from him, the development I've seen from him over the last few years has been, I can't even put it into words. But, he's a guy who definitely changes the pace of games, brings it every day in training. And I'm happy to see things working out for him right now. So, I noted the omission of him off the roster, but, I think this will just add more fuel to the fire for him. And like you've seen on the weekends, he's doing everything he can to, help the team out and help himself out. So he's definitely been making a case for himself.
Yeah, let him know I'm a big fan of his.
Will do.
Yeah, well, watched him since the Rafa Wiki days, calling those games in Chicago. Yes. He's come on and watched you as well at the time. Gaga Slonina was there. Everyone said, you got to look at Chris Brady. You talk about fuel to the fire, right? You were named to the 60-man roster. Don't get called into this roster. How much fuel does that add to the fire for you?
A lot. I would love to represent my country at the the highest level. But I think with this omission of myself off the roster, I think it just, like you said, adds more fuel to the fire and more focus to really what we're trying to accomplish here in Chicago. So that being playoff and a deep run.
Benny, let me jump in real quick here. Chris, it's just from a goalkeeping standpoint. Like, what are the things right now? Obviously, the goalkeeping position has changed so much over the years, but what still are the parts of the game? I know everyone works on everything, right? Everyone says, but where do you need to get better? And then the second part of that, where have you gotten better in the last year or two of playing full time?
Yeah, I think when I first started a couple years back, my biggest growth needed to take place in taking crosses and managing space behind the back line. That's still something, like you said, that we're working on every day of the week. But I think as the game developed, I started to take note of, the emphasis that's put on the goalkeeper's ability to play with their feet. And especially with Greg coming in and the way he wants to play, I think I've had a good opportunity to work on those skills, really hone in that skill set. And I think I've shown quite a bit of progress in that arena. Like you said, still working on it every day of the week. But I think the game is asking a lot of goalkeepers with their feet now. And thankfully, that's something I've been able to adapt to. Still learning different cues, different timing, different things to look for. And I think one of the areas that I think I can still progress in just a little bit more with that is just game management with regards to the ball at my feet, understanding when to play long, when to play short, medium range passes, what could help the game, what could help my teammates. So just understanding the flow of the game with the ball at my feet is probably the biggest thing.
Well, you don't want to get caught on the Twitter feed when playing out of the back goes wrong. So make sure
gotta avoid that one.
You gotta still, sometimes you gotta kick the ball outside the stadium. So don't worry about those.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. So Chicago Fire. Let's talk a little bit about this group here. You've obviously been around the league. You, as I mentioned, you know the history. I think you're headed to New York on Sunday for that one. What are you seeing in this group that, if I'm a Chicago Fire fan and I'm looking at this group, what needs to excite me about, or what does excite me about this group?
The front four. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Jonathan Bamba, Hugo Kuipers, Philip Zinkernagel, and Guti. They're very dangerous front four, and I think they allow us to really execute our game plans onto other teams. So that's something that every team I think we play against definitely makes a note of and definitely prepares for. But yeah, that's the first thing that comes to mind.
Benny, just a note, Chris.
I was thinking,
and you can throw Haile Selassie into that, but Chris, just the lesson here as the goalkeeper: mention those center backs all the time, no matter when you talk. Yeah,
sure.
like, and you're buying them dinner all the time, right? You got to go. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. But this group, and again, I followed them because I called the games for 3 years, and I didn't get to call a playoff game with the group, and there were moments where I thought this is a playoff team that's not performing at a playoff level. But yet when you look at this group, it looks like you guys are finally growing into what I'll just call, for lack of a better term, a Greg Berhalter team in the way that he wants to play, with having the ball on the deck, building through all three lines. Are you starting to feel that it's coming together?
Yeah, for sure, especially with the way we've been performing, but also the chemistry between all the guys on the field, and even like you mentioned, Mara and Haile Selassie, guys with regards to our depth. I think the chemistry has definitely grown there as well. So everybody who's on the field starting the games or coming onto the field during the games understands what we want to do with the ball, how we want to play, and how we want to impose our game plan on other teams. So it's definitely coming together piece by piece. I mean, it's a long season, but yeah, definitely coming together.
Well, all the best here. As I mentioned, you guys got NYC coming up this weekend, followed by Orlando. It's a pretty tough schedule. So you got 3 games on the road. Who did you guys piss off here? I'm just looking at it. You guys, the schedulers don't like you guys here.
They love being on the road. That's where they make all their points.
Yeah, they love playing it. By the way, crowds have been pretty good, huh, Chris, at Chicago, at Soldier Field?
Yep. Winning helps, yep.
Yeah, good for you. Well, go hug those center backs, my man. That's my advice to you, and keep them on your good side. Chris, continued success. Thanks for jumping on with us. And by the way, good luck in the Open Cup as well. It's always a fun competition.
Yeah, thanks for jumping on, and good luck, man.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me.
There you have it, Chris Brady, goalkeeper for the Chicago Fire. All right, we're going to step aside here. They're telling me we got some more information on the U.S. men's national team. We got some drops here. Mauricio Pochettino just wrapping up a press conference here. We'll talk about what he had to say. It'll be the first time we all hear it. So stick with us and continue, as I mentioned, to drop those comments in the live chat. We'll be right back.
UEFA Conference League Final on CBS Sports Network and streaming live on Paramount+.
Yeah, that's my mute button, Benny. That's what that does. Welcome in to Call It What You Want. I do it every single show.
I was wondering if it was my headphones that went off.
No, you're doing it right. I'm doing it wrong. I was saying, Charlie and Jim,
I was lip reading, so don't worry about that.
Charlie and Jimmy have contacted nobody in this week. I mean, is there no internet at least in where are they, in Ireland? I think are they in Belfast? Yeah. There's nothing there, huh? I've got nothing. So they don't really. So you could drop your comments, Bjorn there, Webb. You got it right. My mute button. Yeah. Well, you know what it is. There's some noise in this cell that I'm in right now, and sometimes I don't want people to hear it. All right, Mauricio Pochettino says we're back to the U.S. men's national team. Yunus Musa withdrew from the Gold Cup roster for personal reasons, while Josh Sargent's omission is a football decision. Benny?
Football decision. Well, I mean, yeah, you could say that he hasn't had the best football on the national team. He's played well with Norwich City, but okay. I mean, I don't know. I don't have much to add to that. Disappointing for him.
Yeah, and you know, managers got to make decisions, right? He also goes on here on the offensive roster changes. It says here, we looked at March, all of the names, we didn't perform. That was unnecessary, but we cannot change that now. We have a new opportunity for players to perform. We want them to be brave.
Yeah, you look at the guys that he brought in for Josh Sargent or instead of Josh Sargent, and it's, you know, Brian White is one of them, right? Maybe a Damian Downs. So a guy that's promoted from the second Bundesliga to the first, won the second Bundesliga, a guy that's the leading goal scorer, one of the leading goal scorers in MLS. So, okay, I think, I mean, I can understand where he's going with this.
I think that the one, I said this after the Nations League. Look, I think every manager that comes in, or anyone who came into this, and if it was Berhalter or Bruce or anybody, everyone has to say, yeah, I'm going to look through MLS, and it doesn't matter where you're playing, and I'm going to look. But the inherent inclination is you're going to look at the guys in Europe, right? That's the first guys you're going to look at because, in general, the best players are moving to Europe, right? That's just a general thought. And some of them are still in the phase where they haven't played well enough yet, but they are now. They're getting to a national team level and will move to Europe. I'm thinking of like a Diego Luna type guy or an Ajiman type player that will get a chance at some point to move to Europe. Just haven't done it yet. But my overriding take in the conversations we had with Pochettino, the feeling around the camp when we were in LA back in March, Benny, was that he really doesn't care about the names. And he really doesn't care where you're playing. He only cares about one thing, and that's putting the best group of players together.
Yeah, and I would agree with him. I mean, I can only speak for myself, but as I think about my career, when I went to play in the World Cup, I was playing in second division Denmark at the time. And when I played my best soccer, I was playing at Sporting Kansas City in MLS. So I was called into national team camps when I was playing with the second team in Germany or playing some games in Derby. And so like it doesn't necessarily translate to you being at the best or you being the best player because you play in Europe necessarily. I think you just got to be, you know, you're closing off doors if you're only looking, you know, towards the top European leagues and not necessarily players in MLS. I think you got to look at everybody equally. And if you think somebody in Europe is better than somebody in MLS, bring that guy in. If you think it's the opposite, then bring that other guy in. And then you got to make decisions when you see them in camp ultimately, because at the end of the day, what you do at the club level doesn't always translate to the international level.
Yeah, let's stick on those omissions again here for just a second. Obviously, we have the statement on Christian Pulisic. We have an idea of Yunus Musa. Who are the other guys? Well, we should eliminate Weston McKennie, Timothy Weah, and Gio Reyna because they're not able to come into this camp because of the Club World Cup. So that leaves you with Sargent, who we just got we'll call it a sporting decision on. Yunus Musa, personal reasons. Cameron Carter-Vickers, Tanner Tessmann, who I was under the impression that Pochettino really liked, Paxton Aronson, and Zendejas. Of those guys there, anybody in there that you in your mind you say, you know what, I would like to have seen him in this camp and get an opportunity with this group?
I don't think anybody jumps off the page. I think Tessmann, you know, has had a good season. I think he's an interesting one. He's a little bit different than most of the other guys in that midfield. Alex Zendejas is another guy that I wonder if you can get more out of him at the international level. We see him play at a very high level for Club America in Liga MX. I just don't know, you know, how can you get more of him? I like him as a player, but we just haven't seen him get too many opportunities or shine with the national team jersey on very often.
Zendejas here. We got the note in our private chat. It says Zendejas likely going to the Club World Cup. I'm sure there are a couple of folks in LAFC that would want to change that. Might be going to the Club World Cup.
Definitely.
In that one. One other omission that we kind of brushed over here. Joe Scally. He's been a guy that's played for Pochettino. I'm just thinking in my head. I really thought he was going to be in this roster. Could Joe Scally be one of those guys right now that Mauricio Pochettino says, I have a big enough sample size of Joe Scally. He's played a lot this year. Let me see if I can give him a rest and bring an Alex Freeman or a DeJuan Jones or someone just in case we need some backup down the line. Somebody gets hurt. We've seen it. It's going to happen before the World Cup, unfortunately. Not everybody gets their first team, their full complement of players. Could there be an element of that? Because I don't think that Joe Scally's done anything, and I'll use the term again, from a sporting standpoint that doesn't warrant being back in with the national team.
I would think so. I think that what you're saying probably, there's some truth to it. If I'm guessing inside Pochettino's brain right now, he probably wants to see Serginho Dest play as the right back, and he'd rather bring somebody that is more of the backup than a Joe Scally and maybe he's there without playing much as opposed to maybe getting some rest. And like you said, he's seen enough of him to kind of leave him at home and bring somebody else that he hasn't seen that might be on the bench and get some minutes. But I do think Serginho Dest is probably the guy that is going to see the most minutes in that position.
Yeah, again, this roster came out we got it about an hour ago. So I'm still digesting all of this, and I'm wondering now. When we first started talking about the Gold Cup, the three names that kept coming up were obviously Weah, McKennie, and Gio Reyna because of the Club World Cup. We almost knew that they weren't going to be here, right? So we adjusted everything in our brain to say basically the rest of the guys are going to be here, barring some injuries. I knew Serginho Dest would have a chance to come back into the fold. I haven't quite yet had enough time to adjust my mindset with now what I expect from this. I want to tell you that, like I would tell you every single tournament in CONCACAF, that you go in it to win the tournament. And we've seen this U.S. men's national team win tournaments with lesser sides than we're seeing here, right? With B teams, right? I don't know if you've had a chance to adjust your mindset on what the expectation now should be at the Gold Cup. Again, I get it. Everyone's going to say, yeah, we got to go there to win it, right? But I'm not quite sure if that's my mindset, because you said something earlier, Benny. Sorry, you said something earlier that kind of led me to believe that there will be people out there, and you were leaning that way, that you're looking for individuals as well, which now changes the complete focus.
Correct.
Of how you. So
I'd
again,
ask you this, Tony. This is what I would ask you and our listeners, fans. What would you be more satisfied with at the end of this tournament? You grinding out results, maybe not playing at your best, but finding ways to win and ultimately winning a championship, or playing some more. The performances are better. There's more cohesion with the group. You find maybe a handful of guys that you can say, okay, let's bring them into some of these friendlies going into the World Cup. And if they do well there, then they're on the roster for the World Cup. And you kind of feel like the performances are better. But ultimately, let's say, you lose to Mexico in the semis or in the finals. Which one of those two, I think, do you take?
It's such a shitty question to ask. Yeah, because one shows you progress and one shows you a trophy that might not have progress in it, right? And that's kind of where you're at. Look,
I think winning is progress, right?
Yeah,
Even if you don't play great, the winning mentality, I think,
yeah.
still gives you something to build off of. But it's not an easy one. And I know what the answer is for me, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, look, I want to see progress, but if I flip the script just for a second, and this is me thinking out loud, right? So this is not me answering your question right now. If someone said to me, "Hey, you won the World Cup and you guys you didn't play well for 7 games, but or you got to the group phase, you won a game, you lost in extra time, but you guys showed a lot of progress," I'm like, Give me the World Cup trophy, man.
Yeah, but that's the World Cup. That's the final goal, right? We're on the pathway there right now.
I'm in like a mental pretzel right now. Yeah, look, I do want to see progress no matter what. And I will say, if it's at the cost of not winning the Gold Cup, but I have real tangible progress in how the team plays, the speed of play, the way they dealt with maybe adversity for little parts of the games, because I thought that was a problem at the Nations League. Like, you get pinned back and something doesn't happen. All of a sudden, you can't switch the gear back on. Like, you can't go back to running the game again, which I think was a quality of a lot of the teams we had, including some of your generation, the end of my generation's teams. Like, those qualities really started to show. So it would be the whatever. I'm not answering your question, dude. Whatever happens, I need to see progress. That's where I'm at right now. I need to see progress in the end. So I guess results. I can't even believe I'm saying this. Results in that case don't necessarily matter.
And I think that this is a conversation that if you ask the fans, and we're seeing some of these comments are. Some people are saying, win above all else. I want a trophy. Some people are saying, man, if I have a better feeling about how this team is going to look in the World Cup, I'd rather take that, the cohesion, the chemistry over winning. But for the fans, I can totally understand it being maybe a 50-50 or a 60-40 or whatever. Now, I'll ask you this question. What do you think Poch's answer to that question would be?
Well, I'm cheating a little bit because we sat with him a bunch of times in Nations League, and he talked about the winning mentality. Right? Like, but that also entails putting teams under pressure, winning 1v1 duels, being good or being well organized, dealing with adversity in games. And all of those things equal in the end, you win games, right? So it's a little bit of both. So, but I would think, though, Mauricio Pochettino probably feels like he's got to win this tournament. Right?
Really? I don't know if he thinks that way, because I think he got brought on for one thing, and that's to succeed at the World Cup.
Yeah, no, that's where he'll be judged. But I would think, seeing him, listening to him, he was not happy after the first game, as you can imagine.
He shouldn't be.
Yeah, he was not happy, and I think he was probably not happy with. Okay, they gave up a late goal, but responses in the game, right? Responses, and then. How confident can you really feel if you go through this and you don't win anything in the end?
I think so. Here's my thoughts on just this thought process of what we're talking about here. If you see some kind of progression with the quality of play, the style, there's a cohesion, there's an understanding of what we're going to see with Pochettino's teams, you're ultimately going to make a deep run. You're not going to, we played well, but we lost in the group round, right? In the Gold Cup, you're going to make a deep run. You're probably at least getting to the final, or maybe, if you lose in the semis to a better Mexico team, or by, unlucky, whatever here or there. Now, if that leads to something of a better performance, and now in the World Cup, we see better performances in itself, and that means that we go one round further than we would if we just put everything on the table to win in the Gold Cup and not necessarily play to kind of improve, I would take that. Give me one more round in the World Cup. Let's get to the quarters instead of the round of 16 and take a second place finish against Mexico in the Gold Cup. Where do I sign off on that? Because to me, Pochettino's got to be thinking, I have to get this team playing at its highest level in 12 months from now. And if that means doing something a little bit less than everything to win right now, I think he's okay with that too.
Yeah, it's a shift in mentality, and I'm not surprised. I haven't read the comments here just because just looking at other things. I'm not surprised there's a mix from a fan standpoint of where they want to see this thing, and probably a lot of mixed emotions because you didn't get a warm and fuzzy feeling coming out of the Nations League. I mean, there isn't really a lot outside of Diego Luna and his performance. There wasn't a lot to be warm and fuzzy about.
No, there wasn't.
Yeah. All right, really quick before we sign off here, and then again, keep those comments coming in. We appreciate you. This time of the show, you can write anything you want about Jimmy and Charlie, even if you want to wish them luck and try and pass them this beat course that they're on right now. Some big games for some guys. Busio and Venezia must-win game against Juventus to stay above the relegation zone. They went into match day 37 outside of the relegation zone. They currently are back in the relegation zone. And Juventus are looking to secure a top 4, which would, of course, mean, at least for the moment, Timothy Weah and Weston McKennie are playing in Champions League football next week. Yeah,
look, Venezia is gonna be a tough task, because I think they not only do they have to win against Juventus, but they gotta one of 2 results need to go their way so that they can skip over, or maybe 2 results, Empoli and Lecce. So difficult ask there for Venezia.
Yeah, and don't forget, we got all those games covered right here on Paramount Plus across our CBS networks. Zendejas, Club America, they're on the cusp of their 4th straight league title against Toluca here. It's been a while. I don't know when the last time someone's won 4 in a row, but it seems like a while, because it seems like a rotating cast for the Clausura and Apertura with regards to champions in Mexico.
Yeah, like we said, Alex Zendejas has been fantastic with his club team. He scored, I believe, 2 goals last time that they won it in the last championship earlier. So he's been fantastic, but we haven't seen that with the national team. But yes, Club America, one of the top teams in CONCACAF, if not the best team in CONCACAF. One other big cup match, the DFB Pokal, the final. Arminia Bielefeld against Stuttgart. If you haven't seen the interview we did with Mel Corbos, go on. I guess you can catch it on the Golazzo America YouTube channel. Just a fascinating character. A guy that's been all around, started at Red Bull Academy, has gone through different leagues around Europe, is now with 3rd Division Arminia, who are going to get or promoted. And they're going to play, I believe they play Stuttgart, right? Yeah, in the final on Saturday, 2 p.m. Just an amazing story. A 3rd division side in Germany coming off of beating Bayer Leverkusen. We talked to him about that. It was just kind of a fascinating conversation. So check that one out as well. Again, U.S. men's national team roster. Continue to drop your comments in here. It's moving pretty quick right now. We're getting closer and closer to the World Cup, and we'll see how this thing works out. Good luck to all the Americans that are playing this weekend in important matches. We're going to sign off here for Jimmy and for Charlie and my man Benny Fehlhaber, all the guys behind the scenes here. Appreciate you guys jumping on. We'll be back on Tuesday. I think, Benny, that Jimmy and Charlie will be back. Who knows? They don't reach out to anybody. So with their shiny new little
just
be
ready.
Right?
They're saying in here with exclamation points, they'll be back. They'll be back. We're not quite sure, Des, that they'll be back. We haven't heard from them. So we'll do that. Thanks again for watching Call It What You Want. We'll catch you next week.